What's up, everyone? It's Adar coming at you with another episode of Startup Engineering Daily. Let's hop right into it. We've been covering a lot of incidents and vulnerabilities and CVEs that have been exposed, but I'm not really a security expert, so I don't know how much I want to speak on them. And the original reason why I started doing these stories is just so that people don't have to use Twitter and they can stay up to date. I still feel it's valuable to cover some of these, even though I don't have really deep insight, and I'll have more deep insight on like the future stories of like software engineering as a whole, especially like consumer and enterprise SaaS development. Nonetheless, first story for today is the CVE called CopyFail, which is a Linux privilege escalation bug that lets any local user get root using a 732-byte Python script, and it works on basically every major Linux distro shipped since 2017. You can check out the CVE website at copy.fail, and they have the write-up in the GitHub. And this is where like I'm kind of lost, but it's a logic flaw in the kernel's cryptocode NCESN via AF, ALG, and splice that allows a small write into the page cache, which can be used to tamper with a set UID binary like user bin su. And this like dark web informer account says, think of how bad this is going to be for shared environments like Kubernetes, CI runners, and cloud sandboxes, where it enables container escape intended to host compromise. So that's obviously really bad. And it was found by Theory Zint code scanner, patched in the mainline kernel, so that's good, and publicly disclosed on April 29, 2026, which was yesterday. If you can't patch right away, the recommended workaround is to disable the ALGIF AEAD module. And also in the comments, there's like a quick fix patch that you can do. I saw Low Level Gaming was also tweeting about that. So, you know, really crazy. Speaks to AI vulnerabilities found. I don't know what the Zint code scanner is and how old this bug is, but I know that like Claude found that OpenBSD bug, but this seems to be more human generated. But nonetheless, so many vulnerabilities, so many incidents. It is easy to get like very doom and gloom about it, but also from another perspective, it's like we're so early in the industry that we're going to be able to gain so much from learning about these incidents and patching them. And hopefully the takeaways from them will be reusable across other software that's being built. Okay, then next we have one more CVE. I'm not going to talk about the Intercom one. I'll just speak on it very briefly. So Intercom itself was also compromised. Their client 7.0.4 was compromised and was posted to NPM with malware. I believe that would steal environment variables, which is the main thing that happens with these Node.js based vulnerabilities, right? Is they just grab your process.env. So that's your database secrets, your AI keys, your database credentials, etc. So those all get exposed. Now let's focus on this GitHub tweet. This is from Wiz.io, which I guess is a security company, and they achieved remote code execution on GitHub and got access to millions of repositories belonging to other users and organizations. This includes private repositories. All it took is a single git push, and this thread basically explains how they did it. Basically, if you do git push with the -o, they were able to bypass this specific header. I forget the name, but it was x-something header that let them pass payloads, and basically they could take advantage of these semicolons and I guess these backticks as well to bypass the sanitation, or there wasn't sanitation at all, which let them pass like this cat payload.txt, which is what they're demonstrating here. And basically they were able to run remote code execution on the GitHub servers, even through GitHub Enterprise and through github.com. It was patched within 6 hours by GitHub, so only people that are using GitHub Enterprise, which is like a local version that they sell to companies, need to patch. But nonetheless, super crazy. I don't know if they're going to reach out to people who were compromised and if their code was leaked. It's very scary. Luckily, it was like a research team. And that's what we talked about yesterday too, which is like these researchers and these security guys could be so much more malicious, but it's really like all of the white hats who are the most successful and just for the love of the game, it seems like. And we don't have any word on like if they got a bounty for this or what the bounty would look like. But nonetheless, we are so lucky that we live in a world where these security researchers who are doing like the worst compromises are always like white hats or working for security companies that are trying to sell their products, as opposed to like black hats where it's like they literally could steal private repos. And I know people store API keys in their private repos, which is not secure at all. So very scary, very interesting. Another kind of L for GitHub, but it was like through the Git client as well. So I don't know if this would affect other servers or if it's only GitHub specifically. Maybe the CV and the write-up speaks more on that. That's at wiz.io, but nonetheless, super crazy. Okay, and now back to stories that I kind of have more overview on or a bit more expertise to speak on. We have a tweet from TechBog, who's building Clanker Cloud, which is kind of like an AWS replacement, or I think it's like an AI layer on top of AWS and all these to like kind of help you optimize your costs. But he says software engineering has changed. A lot of people are still trying to resist to the idea. It will take enterprise still years to catch up, but the field has changed and a lot of knowledge that software engineers had is useless. However, not all of it, and the bit that's not outdated, those skills are still the most useful in the new AI era. It will take a lot of time for people to adjust, especially for the veterans that do not want to accept the new times. Perhaps a change of roles in those cases are good, or even fields, but people who know and care about software engineering will be in high demand in the upcoming years. You just no longer have to be a code monkey. And then he ends it saying, I think we just need to recognize that a lot of code monkey jobs are just over. They will not exist going forward. So I don't know how much I agree with this. I do agree with the purpose that like if you have someone who's technically inclined and is also product oriented, then you'll be able to get rid of developers beneath them because you just have AI writing the code. And it's like if you just have developers who are purely writing code but not actually working on like good system design and architecture, then they're going to be completely useless. But I do still think that there is a role for engineering where it's like you don't need to be a product leader to be a good engineer. And this is kind of what Ken C. Dodds was writing about. I don't know, a lot of people disagree with what he was saying from his blog about the last software engineer, which I decided not to cover because I just felt it was too abstract at this point. But it's like you do not have to be product oriented to be a good engineer even today, in my opinion. There's so much code. If you just tell Claude to write a feature, it's not going to design it well. It's going to design it from a base level, from a tutorial level. That's kind of how I used to speak about it, is like tutorials, you know, there's no error handling. It's just straight imperative, like writing line by line of like saying what to do. It doesn't have any error handlers. It doesn't have any queuing. It doesn't have any of this stuff. You have to really prompt it hard to make sure that you get the scalable software. So you don't need to be product oriented, in my opinion. I am a very product oriented developer, but I do think there's still a lot of value, even more value in the age of AI now, for engineers that just want to take product specifications and product requirements and turn them into well-engineered solutions, which isn't really product oriented. That's still engineering, where it's like you understand database. Maybe it's more senior, and like the kind of the junior engineers of like just writing code is completely pointless. But at least from my perspective, where I've been working in startups my whole career, I've always had to do that. You know, I've always had to stand up the infrastructure, understand like what the scaling looks like, what the data models look like. And I haven't, you know, done a perfect job at that my whole career. I've had to learn a lot. And even today, I'm still learning so much, which is why it's really exciting in the age of AI, because it gives us the ability to learn when you know how to prompt it. But if you just tell Claude or you tell Codex to build something, it's almost definitely going to build it in the most simple way possible, which is not going to be the best. Especially for high scale, like consumer and enterprise software, it's really not going to be good, at least in my experience. Maybe that's my prompting, but you know, these are just out of the box. Like you have to build the rules. You have to know what the good specifications are, what the good principles are from these like designing data intensive services and all of these different books of how to actually build good code. So I do somewhat agree with this, where it's like previously, if you were writing code by hand or you were just building UI only, like very simple front ends, then you have been replaced. But if you're doing like any kind of high level design or any kind of software that's going to be used by hundreds of thousands or millions of people, or just touch money in general, you still need someone who's very engineering focused. They don't need to be product based. They're still going to be a product leader, in my opinion, who can design it. And if anything, maybe it gives more freedom to software engineers who want to move to product, because they don't have to rely so much on the lowest level of the code execution and the code output, that they can actually kind of take the product job. And you don't have to worry about like that back and forth between product people who don't understand the engineering and the tech debt and all of the blockers that are coming from their new feature requests. But I still think understanding engineering principles, understanding database principles and architecture and system design is more important than ever. Okay, next we have a tweet from Gurgly, who is ex-Uber, and now he works on Pragmatic Engineer, the newsletter, and I think it's also a podcast. And he just kind of lays out some of these things that people have been really trash talking Anthropic about. And I had another tweet that I was going to cover, but I'm just going to put that tweet in the description next to this one. But he says, the last month, Anthropic really behaves like it was bought by private equity, raises prices without offering anything meaningful in return, Opus 4.7 tokenization, poor customer support for paying customers, silent bans of a few 50-plus seat corp accounts, shady growth attacks that go against the company's previously stated values on integrity, e.g. silent updates on the pricing page, removing Claude Code from the $20 a month packages. So there was another tweet as well, which I guess I'll share real quick, but these are all going to be tied in the same story. But basically, Anthropic overcharged this guy with a buggy anti-abuse system. They admitted, fixed it, then closed the ticket with zero refund. Whole thread is now packed with dozens of people refund this guy. It's a drop in the ocean, but still would look good for him. So basically, this GitHub issue, all it shows is that like this guy had a Hermes.md in his Git commits. And because of that, we've talked about it before, but they have this prompt level usage system where basically if you have OpenClaw or you have Hermes in your prompt at all, like the prompt that you're sending to Claude Code, they're going to charge you extra usage for it instead of using your subscription plan. So that's super messed up. You know, it's a horrible system that they're doing, and they kind of just don't care about their comms at all, or the public relations. So I really don't know where to go with this. I canceled my Claude Max because I went back to Cursor, and I've been using GPT 5.5 with Codex as well, and I've been having a good time with it. I know people really like Claude. One of my really good friends told me that Claude design is like the best, and I really like his UI work. So he does still think that Opus is probably the best for design. So maybe I'm missing out something there. But in general, I just feel like this company is so hard to like work with, so sketchy to use. You know, I think all of this could have been solved if they had just been public about how the $200 max plan is a Claude Code only promo, and it's like you can't use it with external systems. But they never went about that. They were always like, this is Claude Max separate from Claude Code, and they tried to remove Claude Code from the $20 plan, and they said it was only supposed to go to 2% of users, but it went to everyone. So just such a mess over there at Anthropic. And also there was this huge tweet from Theo where basically he was like really dogging on them, and he was telling people that work in Anthropic if they want to get another job at another lab that he'll help them, and basically how Dario and like the leadership at Anthropic are really holding back their engineers from building good stuff. And that's kind of ignoring all the bugs and stuff too, and how their uptime has been like really devastating compared to Codex, and also Codex is like resetting the usage limits like every week. So it's really interesting how back and forth these things go. You know, like you're only as good as your last at bat is one of those like phrases that I really think holds true, especially in business. So for now, OpenAI is on top. There is the lawsuit with Elon. We haven't covered that at all. I'm going to wait a little bit until some of that kind of comes to fruition and we can have more news to really talk about. There has been a bit of drama, but nothing too crazy. But yeah, really interesting, and curious what people think about Anthropic right now and Opus versus GPT, etc. Okay, and then lastly, we have another tweet from Gurgly. I think that's how you say his name, but ex-Uber, and now runs the Pragmatic Engineer newsletter, which I think is also a podcast. And there was this tweet. I wasn't sure if it was actually real, but it does seem to be real just because he's responding to it, which is the Jane Street office. And Jane Street's a high-frequency trading company, so they're kind of like a Goldman Sachs, but lower level. And it was shown recently that they have like one of the highest profits per employees. I think they have like 400 employees or so. Maybe it was in the thousands, but it was like about $8 million in revenue per employee. And it's a high-frequency trading, like stock trading, trading. They do code as well, but I believe it's almost all financial markets work that they're doing. And, you know, it's pretty cool. They're all working in person, like side by side. And that's kind of what Gergley's pointing out here too, which is that like he notices devs are pairing at several desks. Lots of them are talking to one another. Those locked in do so with noise canceling headphones. Having worked at a place like this before, JP Morgan, you get a lot more comms and camaraderie than you'd assume for what it's worth. And then he says also big difference that there's casual close. But I thought this was really interesting because, you know, especially when AI was coming out, and I guess during COVID, primarily even before AI, it was really starting to seem like you could build a fully remote company. I know a lot of people have gone back and forth on this, and there's a lot of companies now that are fully in person. You know, I think all the AI labs are in person for what it's worth, and there are a lot of startups that are forcing in person, but I do work for a company that's fully remote, and we do have some benefits. We do like to go to the office, at least me and one of my colleagues, we go to the office quite frequently just to hang out because we're friends as well on top of our work. But it is really interesting, like what the meta is right now of like, is it the meta to have people in these super open office spaces sitting side by side and, you know, being able to talk to each other, being able to work with each other? And it is kind of an accountability thing, like I guess to make sure people aren't like slacking off and all that. But also it's like you look at GitLab and they're a fully remote team. They have this huge handbook of how to build fully remote companies, and that seems to work pretty well for them. So I don't know what the meta is right now. I think it is very interesting. I don't know like which is the best. And like if I was going to start a company in the future, would I require people to come into the office? You know, you have so much bottleneck of like commute and being limited on your hiring based on regional. That's why you kind of have to move to San Francisco, even though personally I'm in LA and I would like to build my companies in LA. It's just a lot to think about and a lot to consider. And I don't think there is a best practice right now, but it is interesting how a lot of companies have tried to return to office. I know a lot of people would say that the return to office piece is also like to help lay up people off. So like you kind of force them to return to the office, you know that X% won't be able to, so you can just lay them off or fire them. But if we're approaching it from a non-cynical perspective, it is interesting to think about like what the best practice is for building these teams and how to manage and coordinate with them.
This kind of stuff interests you and you want to talk with some like-minded people, join the Audinato Discord in the description. Thanks.